Hello everyone, and welcome back to Coffee Nick's Movie Picks, a bold blend of coffee and movie review podcasting. My name is Nick Delaney, and I am your show host, coffee and movie reviewer, and the guy who will try to restrain himself from being Aunt Gladys for Halloween this year, but will ultimately fail in doing so. In this episode, we are having a discussion of Weapons, the second film from director Zach Cregger, over a S'mores Draft Latte from La Colombe. In addition, I have an important announcement to share about the show, so please stay tuned for that. Everyone, please take a seat, stay a while, and let's talk movies over some coffee. Like I said, I have an important announcement to share, and I won't keep you all waiting. I won't keep myself waiting, so let's get it out of the way right here. Obviously, if you follow along with this show, if you are looking at what I've released recently or anything like that, you will have noticed that I have not released a new episode in over a month. And I do apologize about that, and I apologize that there is no communication about that. But I don't know. I spent some time away from it. I kind of just took a step back and everything. And I feel like I really didn't have the time or energy to even make a new episode if I wanted to. And I'd like to start by saying that if you listen to the show, if you're listening to this, if you've listened to an episode before, if you've supported the show in any way, I greatly appreciate you. I really, really do. And I really appreciate what this show has given me. And I've loved to see what I've been able to do with the show, what I've been able to try out and experiment with. It's meant everything to me. So thank you all for giving me that platform. But like I said, there hasn't been an episode in quite some time. And I've been thinking a lot about what that means and what I see the show as going forward. And I will say that this summer, I have been experiencing a massive loss of motivation, a massive loss in enjoyment, not just with this show, but with other areas of my life. Things that used to bring me enjoyment don't quite do the same thing anymore. And really, even if I wanted to make a new episode, I just haven't had the time. It's been really hard to keep up with it. It's been a really busy summer and overall just not a great one. I have a lot more hope for the fall, and part of that is because of the decisions that I've made regarding the show and other areas of my life. But yeah, and I'm not saying it was a horrible, no good summer. That's also something I'm working on, is not generalizing everything, not painting everything in just a black and white shell. But yeah, it's been difficult to pour into my glass, and I have released a lot of episodes this summer towards the beginning, the earlier half, and it felt more like a chore than something that I enjoyed or that poured into me. And I feel like because I wasn't really getting that, I wasn't enjoying the process like I usually do. I wasn't creating the best product. I wasn't creating the best episode that I possibly could. And I don't think that's fair. There are so many movie podcasts out there. And there's probably, I don't really know of any other coffee podcasts, but there are probably some out there. And I don't think it's fair to be making one if I don't think I'm contributing something special. Because then I'm just crowding this already overcrowded space. So because of that, I have decided to take a step back from the show for a little while. This will be the last episode for the indefinite future. And I'm very sorry if this is upsetting news to you, but I imagine you're already pretty upset because I haven't released an episode in such a long time, and I do apologize. But yes, I have decided that this is a natural stopping point for the show. This is what feels right to me. I've thought about this for quite some time. I've wrote down a list of why would I continue doing the show, and then a list of why would I stop doing the show. And as I was writing down the latter list of why I would stop doing it, I felt a sense of relief and a sense of weight being lifted off my shoulders, and I'm taking that as a sign that this is the right decision for me right now. And I would like to say that this does not at all mean that the show is over. The show is not just buried 6 feet under, never coming back, completely dead. It is resting. It will be resting. I'm considering this as a hiatus, but it is indefinite. I don't know when the next episode will be. I'm holding the space for new episodes to be coming out, I don't know, in like a month. But it could be a month, it could be 6 months, it could be a year. I really don't know. But like I said, I don't think it's fair to be creating something I'm not passionate about because there are so many other options out there. And I want to make sure I'm creating the best episodes I possibly can. So I am going to take this as a natural stopping point. I'm going to do things in the time I normally would be producing this podcast. I'm going to find other ways to pour into my glass, to enjoy life, to find energy, to reflect. I'm going to discover new things to do. I originally created this show because I wanted to pour into my glass. I wanted to flex the creative side of my brain. I wanted to engage creatively with something. And I'm very grateful that this show and you as an audience gave me the outlet to do that. But recently this summer, I just feel like it has not been doing that. So I think it's time to focus on other areas of my life that pour into me and that exercise that creative part of my brain. It might just be I watch more movies from now on instead of trying to focus like, oh, what am I doing next on the show? Blah, 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 blah. And when the show does come back, I want it to be refreshed. I want it to have like a renewed focus. I feel like with the show, I've also been pretty sporadic with it and trying to do all sorts of new things, which has been really cool. But they're ultimately things that I don't think I reflect me and that I want to be doing. Like video podcasting, the Patreon page and all that. They're not very focused on what this show is intended to be. So when I do come back to the show, I would also like to have a renewed sense of focus. I would like this show to be more to the point. I would like it to be more beneficial to you all. With that being said, I also am deciding not to continue having the Patreon page, but I will continue like the coffee house because I really do enjoy that. And with that being said, Lynchian Picks will continue. Obviously, it is way off schedule now, so that will be on an entirely new schedule, which I will release on a later date on social media. In addition, all episodes and bonus episodes that have already been released for Lynchian Picks will be added to the main channel shortly. Check for that in the coming days. But I put a lot of energy and work into those episodes, and I want to make sure that everyone who would like to hear them can hear them. Putting them on Patreon, although it was a free Patreon, it was just another step. It was an added layer to get people there, and it kind of like distanced those episodes from the show. And I want to make sure that those episodes are sitting right with all the other episodes for people and to make it as convenient as possible. But yes, like I said, I'm holding the space to create new episodes when the need arises, when I kind of feel like that desire to talk about a movie, like, oh, I really want to share this with everyone. Maybe that means I'll create a new episode in the coming months. But my hope is to have the energy and time back around the holidays so that I can do Uncommon Christmas again. But we'll see. Not making any promises because I feel like that's been the issue with the show is I have expectations for myself and, it could come back to bite me. But yeah, and it's just, I feel I've been more addicted to my phone than ever. I don't know. I feel like I need a bit of a reset. And I don't want to have this show kind of like lagging behind because I'm trying to focus on myself or trying to reset myself. I want to do justice to this show, and I want to come back to it when I'm ready to and when I have the energy and time. I don't know how anyone has a podcast with a full-time job, on the side. It's just like, so much energy goes into your full-time job, as it should. And then doing the podcast afterwards, it really is a lot. And I've been able to maintain that for a while because I'm just so passionate, or I was so passionate about the podcast. But recently, it's been busy and everything. And when I get home from work or on the weekends, it's like I have other things I want to do that have been bringing me joy. So I want to focus on those. Or I just need time to rot in my bed and not do anything, It's all a balance. It's all a balance. So I apologize to anyone who is disappointed by this news, and I ask for your understanding and patience. I'm hoping for this show to come back in the future. I would love to continue doing podcasting. I really love it. It's something that's been with me for years and years. So I think in some ways, podcasting will always be a part of my life, and it will be because it's part of my full-time job is to do a different podcast. So, I think this is for the best, speaking of me, speaking of the show. But I would once again like to say thank you, everyone, for tuning into this show, for supporting me and just me rambling nonsense. I just, sometimes I'm like, oh, dang, I didn't make any sense in that episode, or but I hear feedback and people are like, oh, I really liked what you said about this, or I didn't know anyone else thought that way. And that means the world for me to hear that, like, people find something in my show, they resonate with it, and that it adds something to such an oversaturated movie podcasting world. Yeah, and of course I love the coffee part. But, I very much... I could have just let the show go and kind of had this unexplained long gap, but that didn't feel right. I wanted to address kind of this break that has happened. So I was like, okay, I need to make one more episode before I go away and refresh. So that's what this episode is for. And I didn't want it to just be like I hop on and I'm like, hey, no more episodes, and that's it. I wanted it to be a proper episode. So, of course, we're going to be talking about a great movie and a great cup of coffee today. So grab some coffee, sit down with me, and let's talk about movies. So our next segment is Now Brewing, and this is our coffee discussion and review segment. Now Brewing in this episode is the S'mores Draft Latte from La Colombe Coffee Roasters in Washington, D.C. I went to their location over by Chinatown, Mount Vernon Square sort of area. Really pretty area. There's, I think it's the Chinatown Park is what it's called. It's right across from that, but lots of greenery, lots of trees. It's really nice. I previously went to this location and I reviewed something from there on one of the holiday episodes. I think it was the episode with Black Christmas. I reviewed the Oat Nog half tan around the holidays. So this drink was similar to this S'mores one, and it was also a similar price, which if you listen to that episode, you know that the whole thing I had to say was that drink was like $8 or $9 or something. I still do believe that price is a little ridiculous for a drink that I think it comes in a keg and the barista just goes over and, pulls the tab and it pours out. I know there's a lot of other factors that go into this drink, like the quality of the products that go into it and like the machinery. But it's hard to see it as like a handcrafted drink. But I did like this one a lot more. As the name suggests, the S'mores Draft Latte, there were notes of chocolate, graham cracker with like a little bit of a toasty flavor. Kind of obvious. But I love it. I think I have said this on the podcast before, but I think that there is a lot of room for growth for summer flavors with our coffee drinks. I want to see more like blueberry coffee, blackberry, strawberry. Maybe someone could even make like a watermelon kind of moment happen. I had a mosquito cold brew at Gregory's Coffee this summer, and that was fantastic. That's a bit of like a summer flavor. I think there's a lot of room to do that. I think s'mores is a very welcome addition to the summer flavors portfolio. So I'm happy to see this. And, it was a bit more than them just like pouring this drink from a cup into a cup, they had like chocolate drizzle in it. So I was like, okay, there was some effort that went into this. Thank you. But other than that, I think the point of La Colombe is their canned lattes that you just get at like the grocery store or get from the coffee shop. You just pick up a case of the cans or pick up a few cans and have it at home. And those are really good, especially like if you're in a pinch running late for work, just grab one of these cans. It's great. I think that's the point here. I have trouble seeing La Colombe as somewhere where I go for like a nice cup of coffee, sit in a cafe for a while. Nice cafe atmosphere. I really do like it's a beautiful cafe. But, I think it's more in the cans. So if you want to try La Colombe, I would suggest picking up a can from your local store. I know at Trader Joe's in my area, they have La Colombe cans that they sell. So pick one of those up, try it out. I usually have the whatever oat milk double stuff they have. And that's really good. Very like frothy. It's like the best canned coffee you can get. But with all of that being said, I give the S'mores Draft Latte the Nick pick. It was very yummy. Great for the summertime. If you're interested in trying it, I don't think you can because I think they have already moved on to pumpkin spice already, which that's fine. It is September 1st when I'm recording this, but I do think that s'mores is also a year-round flavor, I think, because you could have s'mores in the winter around a campfire. That's very that's very yummy. But they definitely got rid of it like earlier than when I'm recording. Like it was like 2 weeks ago, I think. So yeah, it's kind of long gone. So sorry about that. But I've been behind and I had it set in my mind that I wanted to review that on this episode. So there's that. Okay. Getting into the coffee thought. This segment, I just talk about whatever I want to, much like you would, getting coffee with a friend. You just talk about random shit. Since we're on the topic of summer, I would like to touch on mosquitoes. Or I would like to not touch on them. I don't want to touch mosquitoes at all. They can hop off. Ever since I was a wee lad, a little boy, those mosquitoes, they love me. They love to see someone like me coming their way. If I'm sitting out on the patio, at my aunt's house, at my parents' house, I don't know, at my apartment in DC, we'll get there. It is Vegas style all-you-can-eat buffet. Vegas style all-you-can-eat buffet anywhere on my body. I'm pretty sure I've had a mosquito bite in my mouth before. They're the worst around my ankles. I hate mosquito bites on my ankles. I get them on my arms. I get them on my neck. I get them on my, everywhere. I've gotten them on my face, like around my eyebrows or, right below my ear. Everywhere. No place is excluded. They are equal opportunity. Everywhere on my body. It's fair game. It's all included. All-inclusive resort for mosquitoes. My body. And look, I'm sure, take it. But I'm all about consent. If they need the blood, that's fine. If that's their livelihood, if that's their game, that's fine. Vampires, they need blood to make it. But I feel like vampires at least ask. They don't enter your house unless they're invited. Mosquitoes are worse than vampires because they just come around, take it, and by the time you notice they were there, they're already long gone. That's the thing. You don't even see them coming. And, there was a period in my life where I feel like they were less of a concern to me. They were horrible when I was a kid. My family always called me Sweet Nikki because I was just such an angel, but also because I would get bitten by mosquitoes so much, and they'd be like, oh, because you're so sweet. There was a period of my life when I was bitten quite a few times. Blood was taken from me. But now I'm back. I'm back to being Sweet Nikki. I'm back to being, I don't know, Red Cross blood drive. Like, I must supply like the entire East Coast of mosquitoes with blood. And I feel like I did this to myself because I moved to DC. I don't know what it is about DC. I mean, I think I do. It's a swamp, right? DC is a swamp, so there are a lot of mosquitoes. It's humid. It's marshy. Mosquitoes like that shit. It's horrible. It's horrible. And anytime, I will say during the day, it's fine, but dare I go out when the sun begins to set and I am eaten and torn apart like Aunt Gladys at the end of Weapons. Spoiler alert. Sorry. It's been out for a few weeks. I think you've seen it by now. I am torn apart. It is so bad, and it's especially bad around my ankles, which I hate. And I don't know why, but on my little tiny patio at my new apartment, which, you know, there's no like forest. There's no like greenery nearby that I think would attract them. It's just like cement and my table. They are crazy, much more so than if I just went for a walk outside on the sidewalk. I don't know what it is. They see like, oh, he's sitting there, sitting down. It's like an open invitation, open house, open season. Like, gimme. I've had enough. I have had enough. And even in the more urban areas of DC, you'll walk past like a patch of mulch, or you'll sit down on like a patio somewhere like you don't expect it. And it's just like mosquitoes everywhere. And you could see them. They're huge. They buzz around and everything. I don't know why that is. Maybe they're like hundreds of years ago in the DC of the past, there was like a pond there that they used to chill at, and like they just haven't gotten over that. And I'm sorry, we snagged your pond and paved over it, and now there's like a empty foxtrot or something sitting there. I don't know, luxury apartment building, because we apparently can't get enough of those in DC. Spoiler alert, yes we can. I'm sorry, but it's no reason to eat me out. Oh? Ooh. One more thing I'd like to say. I had a complete other coffee thought I wanted to talk about, and it was really funny, but I think I've gone on long enough with this one. The mosquito prevention market, the citronella, whatever it's called, candles, the little bands that you can put around your wrists or ankles, maybe the lamps, all of these things, I do not believe they do anything. I really do not. But I also don't use them. So maybe I should. I did use the bands. I've been using the bands a lot this summer, and I'm not convinced they do anything. I think I have to take it to a violent measure, and I have to get one of those lamps that zaps them, which I'm a pacifist. So I don't want to enact violence on these little critters, but I think that is what I must do to prevent these heinous acts. It is time for Now Showing, which is our feature ideological analysis and critical film review segment by yours truly. Early one morning at exactly 2:17 a.m., 17 students in Miss Justine Gandy's third grade class at Maybrook Elementary School woke up, got out of bed, went downstairs, opened the front door, and ran away into the night. Only one student remained in the class, named Alex Lilly. As Justine copes with the mysterious tragedy, other residents investigate it or find themselves unknowingly caught up in its secret. Weapons is written and directed by Zach Kreger. It stars Julia Gardner as Justine Gandy and Josh Brolin as Archer. It was released August 8th, 2025. Now, the first thing I would like to talk about with this movie is a different movie. I would like to talk about Barbarian. If you are a longtime listener of this show, you may know that Barbarian is one of my favorite movies of all time. It is the long-time holder of place number 4 on my Letterboxd top 4. That movie means a lot to me. I really love it. So I watched that movie when it came out in theaters opening weekend, and that, I think, is the perfect movie to go into with zero knowledge or expectations. I actually think it's a pretty good movie to watch alone, especially in a theater. If you're going to see it with people, I'd recommend in a theater, because it's really something like you have to accept its terms. Like, you have to get on its page. You have to match its vibe. And I feel like if you are with people who like typically talk or laugh at like times where the movie doesn't really allow that, you might not get everything you need to out of that movie. But anyways, I saw that movie in the perfect conditions. I saw it in a theater with my friends, and we both all had like a very similar experience. That movie is quite an experience. And I fell in love with it that day forward. I even wrote one of my final papers on it in school. I wrote about kind of like how it depicts masculinity and everything. And in many ways, it was like the early beginnings of like what my research with Greta Gerwig would be. It really set that up pretty well. So that movie means a lot to me, and it's a movie like that just was completely off my radar. I had no idea what it would mean to me when it was coming up. I just kind of went, and it changed me. So with this movie coming out, heading into the film, I tried to match my expectations that I had with Barbarian. I tried to have zero expectations. I tried to keep an open mind. Of course, deep down, I was hoping that it would have that same effect on me, that it would be just as powerful and just as cool as Barbarian is. I really liked the marketing for this movie. I liked the trailers. It kind of did the same thing with Barbarian, where it showed you the rundown. Like, I don't feel like I was caught off guard by anything in the movie, but it very much only showed one side of a very multifaceted film. And I like that they do that with Kreger's work, because I think if this were marketed as like a horror comedy, which I think you could argue that this movie is one, I think people would go into it with much different expectations, and there'd be a lot more laughing like from the very beginning at things that I don't think there really should be laughing for. And I think this was seen with Together, which was my previous review that I did on this channel. That was something that at first was not marketed as a horror comedy, and then kind of last minute it was like, oh, no, it is. Like, have fun with it, laugh with it, which definitely do that, but turned out to be a horror comedy, and it was just kind of like cornball movie, in my opinion. Fun, but a bit cornball at times. So I'm really I'm relieved that the marketing for this movie was handled quite delicately. It was just, promising from the start, and I'm glad that it did not falter in the lead up to the movie's release. I got so worried when this movie started and it had chapters. I don't know if I've mentioned this on this show before, but I roll my eyes, I moan and groan whenever a movie has chapters, when it has title cards and you go through these different chapters. I am kind of like, okay, here we go. I understand them as a storytelling device. I appreciate them as a storytelling device. But when I see them in a movie, I tend to think that they make the movie feel so much longer. And it starts to feel like, okay, now it's like I'm watching a TV show, and there's like 4 to 8 episodes of this TV show like kind of strewn together. And sometimes it feels like, okay, well, like, why can't I just watch it like that and pace myself and take breaks in between? Why do I have to watch this kind of like all in one go? But I think that this movie made a really good use of chapters in that it made sense to watch this all in one go, because you were experiencing kind of like the same thing every time from a different perspective. But each time there was kind of like an added layer. I feel like the stakes got higher every time a new chapter started, which was really surprising to me, because I feel like with a lot of movies that use chapters, as more chapters get added and added on, more is revealed. We know more, which is the case here. But the stakes get lowered. And I like that with this movie, with every chapter, let's use a metaphor, like the crack in the door was kind of widened each time to like the possibilities. I feel like every time we saw something, kind of like they asked us to sort of expand our expectations and like what we think of as the possibilities for the movie. So I like that it kind of played with your imagination a bit. I like that it kind of dug itself deeper and deeper into this mystery, because I think it very much could have kind of dug out of the mystery by using chapters and like, oh, we're slowly solving it, revealing it. And while I guess it was like, the mystery was exposed, I feel like by the end of this movie, I was just as lost in this mystery as I was in the beginning. And I think that's because it kind of becomes a whole different mystery at the end, which I really like. It wasn't kind of like a case closed, mystery solved sort of movie. It was very much like, yeah, this doorway is opening and opening and opening, and that's what the movie was. And, you know, the doorway opens and you walk in and you're in this totally unknown room. And that's the end of the movie. The movie does not like explore this metaphorical room. You are just kind of like left there to think about it at the very end. So I like that the whole movie is kind of just like revealing. It's not necessarily like exposing all of these elements that have to do with the plot. I think that this film also plays off of audience expectations really well. We got this in Barbarian, where we assumed that Keith, Bill Skarsgård's character, we assumed that he kind of was more evil than he really was. You know, he was kind of like someone that Tess should be wary of. So we kind of like had different, you know, it played on our expectations a little bit there. And I feel like it did the same thing with this film in different ways. You know, Justine, she is a character who the audience kind of like gravitated towards, and, you know, we can feel a lot of sympathy for her starting out because, of course, this tragedy is not her fault, even though she's heavily being blamed for it by the parents. We know that there's more going on here, that there's something supernatural happening as an audience. So we gravitate towards her, and the filmmaker obviously knows that because her chapter is first. And we come to learn that, you know, Justine, although you can have a lot of sympathy for her, she also is not a perfect person. She is sort of like coping with this tragedy and trying to play a part in it in a way that is not exactly good or productive. I think of her like kind of accosting this little boy, Alex, and asking him questions and trying to console him and everything. You know, it's not appropriate, but it's how she went about like this tragedy. And obviously like her heavy drinking, you know, a lot could be said about Justine. And I feel like once the audience realizes like, oh, she's not quite like that super relatable character that we thought she was, we then go to Josh Brolin's character, who we start the film with him calling out Justine and like really being very mean to her. So we go to him and we're like, okay, you know, we're about to see like this very angry person. And his chapter starts out with him sleeping in his child's bed, his child who was one of the kids that ran away, sleeping in his child's bed, like obviously extremely distraught by the tragedy. and his wife goes in and looks in on him, and she is very like cold to him and lacks empathy. So immediately, like, our expectations are also subverted with this character as well. And I really like how Zach Cregger does this. He's really good at doing that. It just makes these characters very alive and human and interesting. So it was really like quite a joy every time a new chapter started, because these characters were really fun to get to know and to see them like react to this incident. I guess going through each of these chapters, Justine, her chapter was really good. It's a great start to the movie. And I really liked how similar to Barbarian her chapter could be. The scenes in the house, in her house, were all really great. Zach Cregger just has a really good way of like making a house seem so ominous and like there's danger around every corner. And like that feeling of like isolation. It's kind of like that feeling when you're a little kid and you're in your room, and yes, your room is completely safe, but you just have a bad feeling that like, I don't know, there's something in there with you, or there's something like that's looking at you. It's horrifying, and I think that it makes the first glimpse of Gladys just even more horrifying. Like that was such a scary moment when she's like up in her bed, like trying to look and see if there's anything in there with her, and she lays back down, and on the ceiling is Gladys, who we don't know at the time. It seems like at the time it's like a clown, like with this horrible makeup and like this, you know, frizzled hair. It's terrifying, and I think the horror here is done really well. Archer's chapter is really, really great. It supplements kind of like the horror from the previous chapter with more of like a thriller and a mystery tone. There's more humor in his chapter, I would say. And I also think like it gives us a glimpse into kind of like the abstract emotions that come later in this movie with Archer's dream sequence. I thought that this sequence was the highlight of the movie, where he is sort of like taking the place of his child, running out of the door. He's chasing after his child, but in doing so, he like fills the place of his child in a weird way. Like he runs out the front door at 2:17 a.m. And when he runs into the forest across his house, he stumbles upon his house again. It's like he got turned around. And then in the sky, he sees the large shadow of an assault rifle with the numbers 217 written on it, kind of like an alarm clock. I don't quite know what this means. And I think I read somewhere that Zach Cregger doesn't exactly know what this means either. It's just something that like felt right to him, and that he wanted it to be there. I think the argument could be 100% made that this is a film kind of commenting on school shootings in America. So I think that this sequence, this symbol, is definitely like the largest piece of evidence towards that. I can't exactly say how, and I don't think I need to. I think this is just one of those things where you feel it. Going into this, you could obviously say that this is about gun violence and school shootings in America. So in a movie where there is really not that much gun violence at all, it's very strange to see like an assault rifle as such like a literally large symbol floating above this house. It's quite interesting. I also think that Archer is a really interesting character because of his emotions and how his emotions are depicted. He is someone who notably has trouble saying "I love you" to his own son, when he very clearly does love his son. He is so distraught by his son's loss that it's all he can do. He can't. We see that he is like not functioning the same at work. It's all he thinks about. He's taking it upon himself to find his son. He doesn't trust the police department to do that anymore. So he very clearly loves his son, but he we see that he's had trouble saying that to him. And I think that is something that's haunting this character, that he has not been able to express emotions to his younger son. And here we go, very similar to Barbarian, there is this commentary and this depiction of like masculinity and the shortcomings of masculinity and how harmful masculinity can be if it's not, expressed in a healthy manner. And we see in the dream sequence when the second he is about, he finally musters up the strength to tell his son, like the ghost, weird vision version of his son in bed. The second he's able to say that, he begins to say like, I love, and a light comes on, and then he sees Gladys. Also, again, horrifying. But I think it's really interesting that like he sees Gladys when he is about to finally admit that he loves his son. That feels very deliberate, feels very intentional. But the movie moves on to James's chapter. I think there's the chapter of like the police officer somewhere in here. That one was really good. James's chapter I really liked. I love how this one is scored. I feel like the soundtrack really... I feel like this character kind of moved to the beat of the soundtrack a bit. I remember he's like standing in front of that pawn shop and he has like his headphones on. He's kind of like swaying back and forth like oons, 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 oons. I thought it just had a really good rhythm, especially this was kind of like the halfway point in the movie. And I feel like this chapter kind of like energized you a bit because of the score, and also because I think that this character is kind of like a source of comedy in the movie. A lot of people have been saying this, and I completely agree, and I think this way as well. He is kind of like what Justin Long's character was in Barbarian, and he walks in on the horror. He has nothing to do with like this horrible incident of all of these kids disappearing, but he happens to like walk in on it and witness it firsthand, and he finds out like where all of these kids are and sees them in a really frightening manner. And when he gets to the house where all of the kids are being kept, he like at first ignores kind of like the weird signals, and he continues to like rob the house and like steal all the valuables and everything. Very similar to how like Justin Long's character in Barbarian went to the Airbnb, and instead of paying attention to the signals that like something is wrong, like he should help or call help, he just like looked to profit off of something that would otherwise be horrifying or tragic. Marcus's chapter. Marcus is the principal of the school, and I don't have much to say about this chapter. I think this is when we finally see Gladys as not a normal person, but like more of a normal person, like less like a horror thing. She's still horrifying, but she's, you can kind of like laugh at her. She's kind of like a clown. And she puts on this big personality and everything. This chapter is really interesting because we see Gladys a lot more, but this chapter is also the most gory and the most violent. And this chapter focuses on Marcus and his husband. And there's a lot of discussion happening in regards to this chapter specifically and these characters, because a lot of the really graphic violence and gore in this film happens specifically with Marcus and his husband. And a lot of people are upset with that. And I think that's completely valid. I do find it concerning, and I do find it interesting in a bad way that the violence and gore in this movie seemed to be reserved for the deaths of two gay characters. It does not sit right with me. Do I think this movie is ruined because of that? No. I don't think that the violence and gore was like intentionally reserved for these two characters. Obviously, there's a lot more violence and gore in this movie, mainly with like Aunt Gladys. But it really is quite intense in this chapter with these characters. And I don't exactly know how to feel about it. It doesn't sit right with me. I don't feel like the movie went out of its way to make sure that these characters had like gruesome, gory deaths. Like I said, I don't think it was like intentional, and I don't think that it was reserved for these characters because they are gay men. But I do think that more caution could have been used in this chapter. It's like, yes, like these events are about to unfold in the story, but what are like the optics here? How will this look? How will this come across to audience members? I just feel like I don't think it is, to me personally, I don't think it is like upsetting or like particularly offensive. If you think that way, I like can totally see why, and I like am with you and I get it. But I do think there could have been more consideration here, a bit more caution, because most of you may know, like, there is the long standing historic trope in horror cinema of like bury your gays. Gays are either killed off or they are the villains. And it's just like it develops this message that is not quite, putting it very lightly, it develops a very, very bad message over time. And so concerning, again, like did not ruin this movie for me, but I was kind of just like, oh, okay. Now, what I really want to talk about in this movie is Alex's chapter, the final chapter. I really, really loved this chapter. I think that this was like the best of the movie. It was standout highlight. And obviously, I mean, it makes sense that it defines the whole movie, but like it really shines. This, Justine, and Archer's chapters were all like great. But this one just felt so different. It felt like longer than the other ones. We spent more time with this character, and I think that's because we kind of like saw a perspective of the tragedy. Like it operated on the same timeline as the other chapters, but we saw an entirely different perspective. And it was so beautifully made, I think. I specifically like this chapter because it just made me feel like a little kid. It wasn't like I was just watching a horror movie anymore, and I was watching these like characters in gray areas like operating in this like tragedy, and there's also a comedy. You know, it just simply felt like I was this character. Like this really is the heart of the movie, I think. Down to the details, like Alex in his room, like he has the stars on his ceilings and like on his ceiling and the posters on his walls and everything. It feels like a childhood room. And I don't know, maybe I used to be a little boy once. You know, it just kind of, it really, I don't know, it takes me back to like my childhood room and my relationship with my parents when I was a child. Those moments like before Aunt Gladys shows up and kind of ruins everything for Alex are just very heartwarming. And Alex's dad is a parallel to Josh Brolin, Archer, in that he is a very affectionate dad and he has no issue saying I love you to his kid. And it's just like the tragedy is that this loving dad, like Alex lost his dad in this, and then Archer lost his son, and it's almost like those two characters like gravitate towards each other in a weird way. And it's really interesting because Archer's son bullies Alex, so it's kind of like, you know, is he bullying Alex because his dad doesn't say I love you to him? Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very weird. Lots of stuff to think about here. And, you know, a lot of what we see with Alex is like, I feel like we're kind of like on his level physically. Like we are walking through hallways and we're only like how tall are kids? Like 3 or 4 feet tall? I don't know. But we're kind of like at his eye line, and we're like peeking through doorways and kind of like listening in on things. And I think it's really deliberate that there was no like score in this section of the movie. It was very quiet. It's just like a very, very profound section of the movie. And it's very emotional because you get very invested in like the relationship between these parents and their son. And you see what happens towards the beginning of the movie. So you kind of wonder like how it gets there. This character, Aunt Gladys, shows up and everything changes. She puts a spell on Alex's parents, and she is then manipulating Alex to get her way. We don't exactly know what her goal is. We can assume she's sick, and we can assume like she's like feeding off of the life of like the parents in order to make herself better. She's kind of like a vampire almost. And when that's not enough, that's when she manipulates Alex into luring this classroom of children to the house so Aunt Gladys can then feed off of all of these kids. Very dark, but the character of Alex is weaponized in this way. He is a weapon for Aunt Gladys to fulfill like this evil goal. And this is something that Archer mentions is that like the kids were activated almost like they were weapons, and that's when they fled away into the night. So I think that there's two major themes happening in Weapons. I think there obviously is like some sort of commentary about gun violence in America. But something that is also repeated in this film is the idea of a parasite and something feeding off of another organism. We see Justine, her class, the unit they're focusing on is about parasites. We kind of like catch her talking in the background in Alex's chapter. We also can see like stuff about parasites is written on the board. And then in Marcus's chapter, they're watching a nature documentary, and on the documentary is like a segment about parasites. So there's something happening there. The character of Aunt Gladys is obviously like a parasite of sorts, feeding off of the parents, feeding off of this classroom of kids, and also like in a way feeding off of the tragedy of this town. Yeah, I don't exactly know what that is trying to say or what that means. I think the other commentary here is like obviously weaponizing something to fill your agenda. And I think that this movie is trying to say that kids are being weaponized so much today to fulfill a political agenda. And yeah, that's all I have to say. I think that this film is just like sort of arguing to like leave kids out of it and stop like, you know, feeding off of like a childhood to meet your political agenda or to make a statement, and like let these kids be kids, let them live. It's very interesting. There's obviously like a lot about masculinity in this movie as well, with Josh Brolin's character and also with the police officer character, forgetting the actor and the character's name. You know, I saw this movie twice in theaters, and I saw it the first time, saw it the second time, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll understand it more. I did not. It kind of like still like made as much sense to me the second time as it did the first time, honestly. And that's not a bad thing. I'm okay with like not right away knowing what this movie means to me or what it means in general. I think that's something I actually love about this movie. I like that it doesn't exactly fit in one box or another. Like, yes, you could say this movie is about gun violence, but you can also say it's about taking advantage of like a childhood to meet your political agenda, or you could say it's about, I don't know, domestic abuse, even like with the character of Aunt Gladys, like manipulating this kid, and like the way in which Aunt Gladys leaves. there's like this abuse storyline happening. I enjoy that it doesn't fit in one box or another. I think that this movie has and definitely will cause chronically online people to lose their minds a little bit. Because I think that we have become pretty accustomed to making the subjective objective, making a single interpretation law, or believing that we deserve like some sort of complete explanation of a film when we in fact do not. Lately, I've been reading David Lynch's book, Catching the Big Fish, which is an amazing read, and I'm really taking a lot from it as I'm like stepping into this new chapter and like trying to find out what's right for me. But there's this chapter called The Box and the Key, and it's referencing Mulholland Drive. That's the name of the chapter, and I think the only sentence in the chapter says something like this: I don't know why I did that or what that means. I think I saw somewhere that Zach Kreger also kind of was just like, yeah, I don't really know what it means. I just put that in the movie, like the giant floating assault rifle. I just put it in. It just felt right. And I really like when directors are given the freedom to do something like this, because I feel like a studio executive might ask why, and they might need some reason. But I really think that a director needs kind of like that space to take risks and to kind of like, film is an art form. They need the space to express themselves as an artist in whatever way they see fit, even if they can't explain themselves. That's what art is. You're just kind of like, you're creating something that words can't capture. So I really like that this film kind of just doesn't make sense in some areas and can't fit into boxes, and there really isn't like a true interpretation. There isn't a right answer to this. I think, of course, there are probably YouTube videos already out there that's like weapons explained, and that makes my skin crawl. I say just go watch this movie, and how it makes you feel is the explanation. That is the true explanation, is how this movie makes you feel in isolation. Not what someone like tells you how to feel, not what they tell you it's about. It just is what it is to you. And it's as simple as that. I love the other details of this film. I love how on Justine's car, the witch was written in paint across the side of it. And I really like how that was used throughout the movie. There was that one moment I referenced earlier where Justine confronts the little kid Alex, and she like squats down to kind of be at his eye level. But in doing that, she is like squatting down in front of these words sprawled out behind her that say witch. And she's like, there's no reason to be afraid of me. You can talk to me about whatever you want. And Alex is obviously like, get away from me, and runs away. I love details like that. I love that like something happened, like there was that symbol created in the film from the very beginning, and it just like they continued to make use of it through like clever camera work like that. This is just like a really fun movie, really scary if you're watching for the first time, but it's really fun. These characters are all very kind of like out of the ordinary, larger than life, but again, they kind of have like that gray area that makes them feel human. But the standout character to me is Alex Lilly. I cannot overstate how much I loved that final chapter and the final act. It was just extremely emotional, heartfelt, and it just felt so personal from like the filmmaker's perspective and also from like an audience perspective. It just captured like such an abstract feeling of childhood, and yeah, it made me really emotional. Just like seeing like the copycat version of these parents, and like parents that this little kid loves so much, and seeing them kind of like, it's like in Coraline when she goes and they're like her parents, but they're just off, and they have the button eyes and everything. That's what it felt like. And the two actors that played Alex's parents did such an incredible job. They were terrifying. I think about like when they're standing in front of that door in the hallway guarding it, and they're just kind of like bent weird, and they look very crooked. And like The lighting is also really good, and it kind of like covers their faces. You just sort of see their bodies. Again, like from the perspective of a kid, like looking up. It's quite terrifying if you can't see your parent's face. I feel like there's also a lot of references to The Shining with like a parent going evil and like chasing after the kid, busting down the door and everything. There is just a lot of interesting stuff happening in this movie. I just loved it. It was great. I will return to this movie again and again, I think, and have a great time every single time. I am going to give Weapons the Nick pick. Despite using one of my least favorite storytelling devices in film, Weapons is a story that is never not interesting or horrifying. Starting the events of the film with Justine, we are able to instantly understand exactly what the surface level horror is of this tragedy. As we traverse through this mystery with characters like Archer and James, we are then able to understand the mystery from the perspective of someone who is most impacted by it to least impacted by it. In James's chapter specifically, Krieger continues to express his interest in depicting characters looking to profit off of horrific events in a satirical way. It isn't until the final chapter, the one from Alex's point of view, that Weapons resonates with me in a way that is profound, abstract, and remarkably emotional. Through its lack of soundtrack, its cautious cinematography, and a brilliant performance by Carrie Christopher, Weapons has a funny way of making me feel like an 8-year-old whose whole world was turned into something of a nightmare. Much like Miss Gandy's third grade class, Weapons casted me under its spell and led me to a childlike, emotional state with its abrupt and consistent scares, its sense of humor, and its dark, beating heart. What a movie to go off with. Really loved this one. So sorry that I did not come out with this episode sooner. I had a really good time talking about this movie today. So thank you for listening with me. Thank you for being here. And thank you just for listening to the show. I really appreciate it. Like I said, this will be the last episode for the indefinite future. This is the stopping point of Coffee Nick's movie picks. I am not quite sure when the car will start up again and we'll keep it moving, but I appreciate this journey. I crunched the numbers, and I've had close to 50 film discussions with you guys. All of them have been so unique and so fun, and I really like talking about movies with you guys. It's great. Thank you all again for listening to the show. Please continue to enjoy the show. There will still be new episodes of the show, Lynchian Picks, on the main channel now. I will be releasing in the next few days all of the episodes that have been previously released. And then I will release a new schedule for Lynchian Picks that will account for the remainder of the episodes. So stay tuned for that, and please follow along. Those are really great episodes, and I put a lot of work into those, and I will see that through. In the meantime, please follow the show on Instagram at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks to stay updated on those Lynchian Picks episodes and to be in the know about the show's future return. A special thank you to Nathan Moore for creating the show's opening and closing themes. And until next time, I will be enjoying some movies and coffee.